Hello, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us in today's live stream. My name is Hadeel Shubair, and I'm a regional cloud advocate and data analytics engineer at Microsoft Reactor for Middle East and Africa. I'm very excited to be doing this session with you today. And actually, part of what we do at Microsoft Reactor is we give these kind of sessions where we kind of learn all about technology, all updating emerging technologies, cloud platforms, and all kind of new updates in the tech industry from professionals, from Microsoft MVPs, from Microsoft cloud advocates, from regional cloud advocates, from experts, from professionals, developers, open source developers, and basically from everywhere in the world. So Microsoft Reactors is a place where we all get together to connect, to learn, and to kind of build on our learning journey. Very excited to have you all here with us today. Thank you for joining this live stream. And for today's session, actually, I am joined by a very special guest. I have with me Someleze Diko, who is actually a cloud advocate based in South Africa. Someleze, thank you so much for joining me on this stream today. Very excited to have you along, and very excited to have you, with me to talk all about Power Apps and low code and no code and all that cool stuff. So on today's agenda, we have our session is all going to be about we will be building a asset management app using Power Apps. And Somalise is going to tell us all about that and what we're actually going to be doing today in a bit. But before we do that, as you all know, this event is actually part of our Microsoft Reactor Code of Conduct. So obviously we're all here to learn. So let's make this a friendly environment as much as possible. Let's all be open to all viewpoints and questions, be welcoming, respectful. And we're all here to learn. So if you have any kind of questions, feel free to drop them in the comments section. We'd love to answer all your questions and be there to kind of, help you through that. That being said, let's go to begin to introduce ourselves for a bit. So for those who don't know, my name is Hadeel Shubair. I am a regional cloud advocate and data analytics engineer at Microsoft Reactor for Middle East and Africa. Part of what we do is at Microsoft Reactor and as cloud advocates is we kind of give these sessions where, in our fields or in let's say topics that we're actually passionate about and that we love to share with and grow with the tech community. So my expertise areas and my kind of areas of interest is data science, AI, machine learning, as well as exploring other kind of topics and areas of interest such as low code and no code, like what we're doing today. So this is why I'm very excited to have Someleze share kind of his knowledge and expertise with me to kind of take us on this kind of low code, no code, Power Apps and such journey. I am based in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. Please let us know in the comments where you are based from, where you're based at, and I would love to know if we have any kind of fellow Dubaians living here. I'm very passionate about sharing the knowledge and my expertise areas, as well as learning from other professionals in the field, other cloud advocates and other kind of Microsoft MVPs. We do a lot of collaborations here, just like what we're doing today, Someleze and I. So always keep an eye on, Microsoft Reactor Middle East and Africa is our meetup page, just to kind of, stay up to date with our latest events, what we have next, and, what sessions you would kind of be interested in presenting or learning more about, and even obviously growing the community. If you would like to connect with me, the easiest way you can find me is on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Shubair3, and on LinkedIn, it is just exactly like my name, Hadeel Shubair. That being said, Someleze, the stage is all yours. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm very excited to have you kind of present this awesome session with me. And, maybe you can give the audience a brief intro about you.
Yeah, wonderful, Hadil. Thank you so much for having me during the session so that we can share our knowledge around low code, no code, obviously the Power Platform, which is something I really love and passionate about when it comes to showcasing the power that actually comes from low code, no code. For those that don't know me, my name is Someleze Diko, and I am a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and I'm based out of in South Africa. And obviously, just like Hadil had mentioned earlier on, this is a live stream. So please make sure that you actually mention where you are joining the session from and make sure that you share what you like to use to build solutions, what kind of technology you're into, because I love building solutions with the Power Platform, Teams, and Microsoft Azure. And recently, I actually gained a new skill where I was doing a 30 days of learning, which is 30 days of Microsoft Graph. Now I also love using Microsoft Graph to actually build solutions, and I've found different ways to actually use Microsoft Graph with the Power Platform, with Teams, with Azure, and all of those things. So that's what I really love about the technologies that I'm really interested in, is that you can actually learn them individually, and then afterwards you can be able to build solutions that bring those technologies together. And just like Hadil, I love connecting with communities out there, with people out there that are actually building solutions around whatever technology stack that they're interested in. And the main key thing around those things is that I would love to connect with people on Twitter, on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me on Twitter, you can use my Twitter handle, which is at Digo Someleze, and then on LinkedIn, it's my name, Someleze Digo. And you can connect with me and then just share what you're actually learning, just share your challenges or share your experiences, and then maybe we could ideally just try to work on those together, because you have something that you can teach me, I might have something that I can teach you. So without really wasting any more time, today we are actually looking at the asset management series. So the series actually is going to allow you to learn how to build a connected solution using Power Apps and Power Automate. Whilst you're building that solution, it's not just a regular solution that you're looking at. You're actually working on a project to showcase your new learning. So you are going to be picking up basic skills or fundamental skills around Power Apps, and also fundamental skills around Power Automate. And then you take those skills and you actually put them onto good use while working on a project. So again, this project and the solution that you're going to be working on is actually leveraging Power Apps and Power Automate, just like I mentioned earlier on. And what we have within this asset management series, we're actually looking at 2 days of worth of content. Whereas the first day, which is December 12th, today, we're building an asset management app with Microsoft Power Apps so that people can be able to interface with that solution or with that application that you're building. And then on Friday, which is the December 16th, we're going to be automating an asset management process with Power Automate. So now all of the background processes that are happening within your solution, you are going to be using Power Automate to actually set them up. Sameleze, I hear you talking about asset management series, and you're talking about Power Apps and Power Automate. What do these things really mean, and what technology stack are they really part of? So if you've never really heard about the Microsoft Power Platform, today is your lucky day. The Microsoft Power Platform is actually a no code, low code, and code first platform that allows people, developers, to actually build solutions that would leverage the different products that are within the Power Platform. So developers can be able to build web applications using Power Pages, and also build mobile applications, which is something that we're going to be doing today using Power Apps. And if they actually want to analyze the data that is coming from their web applications and mobile applications, and they want to put them on a dashboard or report, they can use Power BI, because Power BI is actually used for business analytics. And then again, for those background processes that I was mentioning earlier on, this is where you can actually use Power Automate for workflow automation. So for background processes like approval processes and all of those things that you'd actually need for your processes within a specific solution, you can use Power Automate. Now, if you want to add more intelligence to your solution using the Power Platform, and you're very enthusiastic and you're building a solution that uses all five of these products, and you want to move on to adding in AI, this is where Power Virtual Agents actually comes into play, where you can build intelligent virtual agents. Agents is actually a very fancy word of calling them chatbots, but they're very intelligent, and you can actually incorporate them onto your solution. So for an example, if you want to incorporate a chatbot onto your Power Pages website, then you can use Power Virtual Agents to build it, and then incorporate it to Power Pages, and also Power Apps for that matter. But at the center of all of these things, we actually have a business data platform called Dataverse. Dataverse is the Power Platform's data structure or database for that matter. So whenever you are building the solutions, those cool solutions that you're going to be building using the Power Platform, where are you going to store that data? you're going to store that data within Dataverse. So as much as there's Dataverse within the Power Platform, there are other data sources that you can actually use, and there's about 200 plus connectors that go to those different data sources. Like, for an example, your Excel spreadsheet, if you want to just have a light solution that has a very light data source or database where you're just storing your information onto your Excel spreadsheet, to your SQL Server for professional developers. SQL Server databases, they can also be used within the Power Platform, but Dataverse is the first go-to whenever you're using the Power Platform and you actually want to see the full-blown use of the Power Platform. Right, that's about the Power Platform. What are we actually here for? Today, we're looking at episode one of building an asset manager application with Power Apps. And I'm probably sure that Hadil is actually asking herself questions on what is an asset manager app really? What scenario is it really focused on? And to that question, I can say that people would need to imagine an organization where every 3 years employees go through a hardware refresh cycle. The organization would like to build a customized app that runs on the web and mobile devices, which will help streamline device order and approval processes. You remember I mentioned Power Automate. Moreover, they do not have the traditional development resources available, such as a .NET, Xamarin, or custom website developer to create this application. So, Hadil, if you're looking at it, you'd be actually in a very tight spot if you're trying to build a asset manager app, but you do not have those resources around .NET developers or Xamarin developers or a custom website developer. So you must be wondering, really, what exactly can you do? So again, today, this application that we're going to be building will allow employees to submit their request for the hardware refresh cycle based on the allowed condition. Right. I hear the hardware refresh cycle. For people who really do not understand what I'm trying to say about that, so take it as if you have a laptop and you're working for a company, have a laptop. Maybe this laptop is a model from 7 years ago, and now it's 2022 and you're still using the same laptop. That laptop might be at a high risk of being hacked, or a high risk of being very, very slow in terms of the resources that you have when you're trying to jump on a Teams call, or you want to use Visual Studio. If you're a developer, you want to use Visual Studio, the latest version of Visual Studio on your laptop, and it doesn't really have the resources that will be able to carry that specific IDE on your laptop. So what do you do next? This is where you actually go to your manager and submit a form, or you submit a request to your manager to actually order a new device for you that is updated, fresh, and new from the store. This is what an asset management app comes into play, where it will allow you to take your mobile application or your mobile phone, go to the app, and be able to submit your request on your phone, and then it will go to your manager, and your manager would do the necessary steps that he would need to do. So in this case, we are building that entire solution using Power Apps, because in the past, from what I know, is that a lot of people just go into their manager's office and actually just ask for a new laptop.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a very long time. Takes a very long time, right? So now we just want to automate that solution, or want to automate that process, so that it can be very easy for them to submit those requests and get them approved very quickly. So really, what do we do then? You must be wondering, really, that we need to just get onto it and just start building this application, because we understand the scenario, we understand the requirements. But I'd like for you to actually take a breath of fresh air and think about, what do you need to do, or what to think about when you are building such an application or such a solution. So you would need to first think about the front end, where you will allow your users or your customers to interact with this application or interact with this solution. And in our case, we're using Power Apps to build that front end. And then you also need to think about the middleware where you are trying to automate the business processes at the back end. So this is where the background processes are happening, which are business processes where the manager needs to approve your request that you just submitted for that new device that you wanted, and then obviously send you a specific notification when whether it's rejected or it's been approved. And then you may have that and you have a frontware and a middleware, but at the end of the day, we need to store this information. And storing this information, we need a back end where our data is going to get stored. So before I reveal what we actually use for our backend for the solution that we're building, I would like for you guys to actually put it on the chat and think about it and just say what exactly are we using for our backend for the solution. I already mentioned it earlier on, so I'm not going to say it now. I'll probably say it a little bit later. But for our front end, we're using Power Apps. For our middleware, we are going to use Power Automate, which will be on the second episode. For our back end, what do you guys think we're going to use to store this information that we're getting from that? So those are the three things that you would need to think about when you're building a solution, which is your front end, your middleware, your back end, because they make up an entire solution for you. Right.
Awesome.
It's
Thank you
it's
so
it's
much
really
for
awesome.
this quick overview on Power Apps, Power Platform, the products in Power Platform, and I love how Power Apps is actually very useful in kind of as it provides kind of a low code drag and drop kind of platform, makes it very easy to quickly kind of build desktop mobile apps that can be used to automate data capture processes in a way. It's kind of very easy to implement and use from what I've heard, and especially because of the templates it provides, right, to kind of automate the different business processes. Like what we want to learn today is to build an asset management app. So I love how we can do that with using Power Apps, and I would love for you to kind of take us through a demo to kind of actually show us the steps on how we can get started to build, because I believe the best way to learn is by actually showing. So maybe you can kind of take us through the Power App platform, tell us how we can actually build the app and all that stuff, get us into the actual kind of, what actually happens.
Yeah, definitely, Hadil. I love that. I would love to get into that quickly. But
Let's do that.
firstly, just to explain a little bit within this entire thought process of building solutions. So again, like I mentioned earlier on, and Hadil, who's also mentioning about the demo and how we can actually get started, is that if you want to get started on the first part of our solution, which is the front end, we'll be using Power Apps. And what you
Mhm.
see on the screen right now is just a basic template or basic solution that was built by someone for a vehicle inspection application. So what you see on the screen is actually the Power App Studio, where you can drag and drop all the controls that you actually need to use within Power Apps for your interface and build it and make it look nice. As you can see, the illustration itself on the image itself here on the canvas, you can be able to see that this person actually put in a lot of effort for their interface, right? And then obviously the next part, which I'm actually revealing the proper answer to my previous question, where I asked people to send it on the chat, is that for our backend, we're going to be using Microsoft Dataverse to store the data that we are getting from our application, because it's secure, scalable, and it's an intelligent platform for Microsoft Power Platform and Dynamics 365. So just like Hadil had said, and asked for us to actually get into the action and see how we can build this application and walk through the process of building this application. Let's actually build the actual app itself, and we're building the interface and the back end of our application. So the front end and the back end. So I'm going to quickly switch over to my browser, and I am on make.powerapps.com. So if you've never accessed Power Apps before, you can go on make.powerapps.com, and then you can sign in with your M365 account or your Office account, and then you can be able to access it if you have the license for it. So if you are a student or you don't have a license for it, you can sign up for the M365 developer program so that you can be able to have your own environment, your own tenant, so that you can be able to play around with all of those things. Right, let's get right into it. So this is the homepage of Power Apps, you can see there's different options for you to start building your application. You can build an app from blank, which you will have a blank canvas and you can control whatever goes onto your screen, or you can build your application from data. So in this case, it can be from Dataverse, SharePoint, Excel, just like I mentioned earlier on, SQL, or you can build it from an image, or you can build it from a Figma design. So just starting off and you didn't watch this entire series and you want to actually get into the resources of how to build this application, you'd find that there are resources that are provided for you within the Power Apps homepage, which is getting started with Power Apps, other basic formula to change properties, work with external data in a Power Apps Canvas app, and manage and share apps within Power Apps. Those are the different resources that are available for you. You can also get more create options by creating it from a template. But we're not there for today because, again, enough talking too much. Let's actually get into the action. So, the thought process around building this application, right? For me, when I think about it, is we need to actually start with our back end so that we can be able to have a structure of how our application would look like, because we'll build our app from the data instead of it being from blank. How do we do that? So you would go on the left hand side of the screen and click on Dataverse, which will expand Dataverse, and you choose tables. And in this case, once you choose tables, a list of tables will show within Power Apps, which these are standard tables, and also you can also create your own custom tables within Power Apps. So you have those two options to actually create those tables.
So Malaysia, so I have a question here, if that's fine. So what are usually like the scenarios, from someone who comes from a different background? I'm not into, I don't know much about low code, no code. I would love to learn more about it. So what are the scenarios that you can use, standard tables versus custom tables in Dataverse? Would you kind of explain that, maybe tell me the difference between the two and when we can use each one?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question, Hadil. So in this case, when you look at standard tables are for those requirements that are already met by the Power Apps Studio. So in this case, for an example, if your scenario or you're building a solution that has to do with account management or something like that, or you have a solution that has to do with appointments, or you have something to do with currency or email, standard tables are already available for you that you can actually use because it meets that specific requirement. So for an example, if your solution, you want to actually create an account for someone, instead of creating a new table within Dataverse for accounts, where you're going to store the account information for a specific user or a specific client, you already have a table within Dataverse that meets those specific requirements. But when it comes to custom tables, in this case, this is when all of these standard tables that are available to you that you see on the screen are not meeting your requirements, or you have like a different set of requirements. Like in our case, asset management is is a solution or is a scenario that is not being met by the standard tables that are available within Dataverse. So we would have to create a custom table.
Custom
So
tables.
yeah, so we would just create a custom table to create those specific columns that we will need for the custom table. And there are other things within the tables themselves that you would find that there is also standard columns within that table, and then you can create your own custom columns. So they follow a similar explanation to standard tables and custom tables, but on a column level, where you'll find that within your table, you have those specific set of columns which are standard that you can use. And then if you want to add more columns within your table, then you add a custom column within your table.
Awesome.
I hope that answers your question, Hadil.
That does explain the kind of difference between the two scenarios that could be used for tables. I think it's very important to know when you have to use each, because obviously you don't want to kind of start with building and using the wrong tables or not knowing what to select. So it's very important to know the difference between both, and I think you explained that very clearly. So thank you so much. You can kind of go on. Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, let's get right into it. Like I mentioned earlier on, for our scenario, we need our own custom table because we want to store the um, the device request or the hardware refresh cycle requests that are going to be submitted by our organization's employees. So we will click on new table at the top. So you just click on just new table. So I'm just going to check that, and then you click on new table, and then you have to give it a display name. So in this case, I'm just going to call it asset manager. Uh, this will be our asset manager table, and then the plural name will be automatically be picked up by Dataverse or Power Apps, where it says asset manager, so it just makes it plural. One thing that I would actually would like for you guys to do when you are following along with this session is that on the primary column, right, there is a primary column which is name, so you can name it whatever you want to name it within your custom table. But currently, this primary column is actually business required. So if you're not going to use the primary column within your custom table or within your solution, then I would suggest for you to change this from being business required, which is it's required to be filled in, to optional, so that we can not fill it in when we are submitting data within our app or within our Power Automate solution. So let's go back to properties. Then you click on enable attachments. So in this case, for our asset manager, we actually want people to upload the proof of, let's say, proof of payment or an invoice of some sort that actually provides the proof that this is the actual cost to that device they want to acquire, so that obviously you don't want people saying that they want to buy a laptop for 20,000, whereas that laptop actually costs 14,000 rand. So you want to have proof that the prices actually match, right? So after that, you can just click on save. So there are advanced options that you don't necessarily need to worry about too much, but you can change the record ownership from being user or team to being organization based off of whatever requirements that you have. If it's user or team, that record is being owned by that specific user or that specific team, whereas an organization is owned by the entire organization. There's more information around this to the resources that we're going to share at the end. So I'm just going to choose organization, and then everything else I don't need to worry about. And then you just click on save. And then this will create our custom table in the background. And obviously, we would then need to add our own custom columns that would actually need for that specific scenario. Where, for an example, we want to capture the device name, the brand, we want to capture the cost, because obviously we need to monitor how much people are spending on devices and they're not being really unreasonable around that specific part. And then obviously the status of that specific request. Again, for this solution, we're only using one table because we are trying to make it as simple as much as we can and not make it complex. But you can make this asset management solution much more complex than how we're going to do it within the sessions. Right now, it's just to give you the basics of using Dataverse, using Power Apps, and using Power Automate. Right. So we've created our table, which is asset manager, and you will find that there's different things that are available here. There's columns. So on the schema tab, you find that there's columns. You'll find all the columns available within your table, the relationships that your table has, the keys, which is the primary keys, the forms, the views, the chats. But those are things that we are not currently using because we're just going to build a solution that just uses this table as data storage. And then obviously, if you want to add business rules, you can add business rules within your table based off of whatever requirements you have. Now, if we quickly click on edit, so I want to do this on edit here. If you click on edit to edit that specific table, you'll find that there's plus 15 more number. So that plus 15 more number actually means that there are existing columns that are already there for your table. So there is a created by column, there's a created by delegate column, created on, and so forth. What does that mean? It means that these are your standard columns. So in our case, the standard columns don't really meet our requirements. We actually just need new columns that will meet our requirements. How can we do that? So I'm just going to click on cancel, and then you can click on new column on the plus sign, or you can click on new column here at the top. New row means that you're adding more data within dummy data or whatever data that you're going to add within your table, and then obviously it will be populated within the table. So I'm going to add a new column. My first column will be requester full name. So so that I can capture the requester's full name. So if Hadil is submitting a request for a new device, we'll know that Hadil's full name will be displayed within that request. And then the data type would be single line or text. The format will be text, right? And the behavior will be simple. We're not going to make it calculated. We just want it to be simple because we're going to get the information from our application that we build with Power Apps. And then obviously, is it required? Is it optional? You will say business required because we could say ideally we could say it's business required so that she can fill it in. But in our case, I'm just going to make it optional and we will fill it in a different way. So you're going to make it optional, then click on save. And then again, you add another column, which will be, let's say we want to capture Hadil's email. So we're going to do the same thing. And then you say requester
Email.
email.
Mhm.
And then in this case, it's going to be a single line or text. And the format for that will be email instead of just a text. So say email. And again, we'll leave it as optional because we will fill this in a different way where Hadil is not the one that's actually capturing her full name and the email. Then you click on save. Then we need, I think, about two or three more columns that we're going to add. So in this case, we want the device name, and the device name, I can keep it as a single line of text, which is just a text where Hadil can capture the name of the device, or I can make it a choice column and give them a list of options for those devices. But ideally, I would not really recommend that specific way personally, because in this case, imagine how many devices are out there, and then you have a choice column that has a long list of devices that are available out within the world, and people are trying to just use, let's say, a drop down list, and that drop down list is very long, and that's not really user friendly. So I'm just going to leave it as a single line of text so that Hadil can be able to fill it in. But in this case, I want it to be required. I don't want it to be optional because I want to know which device she wants. Then I click on save. And then the next part will be which brand does that device belong to. So the next column will be device brand. And here I can allow you to make it a choice column. So users or Hadil can choose from a list of options. So we'll change it from being single line of text to being a choice column, choice, and not yes or no. Yes or no is a toggle to say yes or no, whereas choice is a list of options. So you
Multiple
click
choice options. Yes.
yeah, you click on choice, and then again you make it business required, and then when you scroll down, it'll ask you to sync with a global choice, meaning that are you using the global choice table that is available within Dataverse, and then you can go populate your new choices on that table, on that standard table. We don't want to do that. We want to just specify it within our table. We don't want to go to the next table. So you're going to click on no. And then in this case, you just change the label of your choices. You can change the values if you want to, based off of whatever requirements that you want. But in our case, our interest is the label. So I can just add, say, an Acer, and I say Microsoft because we have the Surface Book. And then we'll say HP. And then maybe we can add Asus. And then maybe we can add Lenovo. And then we can leave it there. Everyone else can think of other brands when you carry on. And then we don't want to have a default choice. We just want people to be able to choose and not just have a default choice there. So in this case, we're just going to click on save. And then again, we need a last column in this case, right? Last few columns. We need the cost of the device that Hadil is trying to get because we actually need to understand. So we will say device cost. So we need to understand how much it is based off of the business requirements that we're going to have. This will actually come in play on the next episode for the Power Automate session. So be mindful of that. And then here we can choose currency because it has to do with money. So you choose currency, and then the behavior is simple. It's not optional because we want that amount. So we make it required, and then we click on save. And then the last two columns would then be the request status. So this one is not ideally going to be filled in by Hadil, but instead it will be filled in by the background processes that we're going to have set up for our application, where it actually automatically fills it in. So that's something that we're going to do. And then the next column that we're going to have is actually an image, so that, like I mentioned earlier on, we'll have an image that is being uploaded by Hadil to provide proof that this is the invoice of the device that I'm trying to buy from this specific store. So in this case, I'm just gonna make it say request status. Let's see. So this is going to be request status, and this one will be single line of text. I can choose to make it a choice, right? I can make it a choice and have a list of statuses that are available there, or I can make it text to just auto-populate it using Power Automate. It depends on your requirement. So mine, I just want to make it text so that I can just auto-populate it using Power Automate. But if you want to populate it from your users, and then obviously you can use choice in this case. And then I'm not going to make it required. I'm just going to make it optional. And then I'm going to click on save. And then the last bit of column that we're going to have is the image. Say image upload or invoice upload, depending on you. And then the data type will change from being single line of text to being a file, and then we just choose image. Ideally, your biggest question would be, what if someone wants to upload a PDF file? You can choose file in your case, where you want someone to actually upload PDF files. File will actually just upload any other file a person is trying to upload using app. For demonstration purposes, I'm just going to use an image. And then obviously I'm not going to make it a primary image, because now if that image is gone, it'll always make that image a primary image within that specific table, and then will cause errors down the line. And you click on save. Then from there, we have all of our columns that we're going to need. It's just a few columns, and based off of business requirements that we need, we can build a specific application. I'm not going to add dummy data on the back end using Dataverse. I'm going to add dummy data using our application that we are about to build. Right, so let's head back to the PowerApps homepage, where you can be able to create this application. So I'm going to click on home. Now, the next step is to build the app. How do I build the app? I don't want to build it from scratch, because it will take much more time than intended for the solution to build it from
A blank
scratch,
app. Yeah.
blank app. So we will build it from data. How does that work? It goes to your Dataverse table and looks at your data structure, and then it builds your app based off of your data. You don't believe me? Let's look at it. So you're going to click on Dataverse, and then when you click on Dataverse, it will start loading a screen where you are able to pick and choose the connection that you're going to use for your Dataverse table. Obviously, if you don't find a connection, let's say to your Dataverse table, you will need to add a new connection by clicking on new connection at the top, as you can see on the screen. But in my case, I already have a Dataverse connection, and it shows the different tables that are available within Dataverse. So what can we do now? We need to choose a table, because we need to instruct Power Apps to build an application based off of our table. So instead of scrolling up and down, I'm just going to search for it, and I say asset managers. You can see that the plural name of the table is showing up, and not the name we gave it from the beginning, which is a singular name. The plural name with an S is showing up within here, and then we can click on connect. Once we click on connect, we can just sit back for a few moments, let Power Apps do its magic and actually build a three-screen application for us that we can be able to customize based off of our own business requirements, based off of whatever stuff that we need for our application, right? So I click on skip here, and then you see that there is a browse screen. So there is a browse screen here on the left hand side of the screen. So we call this a tree view within Power App Studio. So I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit too. There's a browse screen on the left-hand side of the screen. We call this a tree view because you are able to see all the different screens that you have within your application. So there's a browse screen. The browse screen allows you to view all of the records that are within your Dataverse table. So if I had dummy data of 5 records within my Dataverse table, they would display here. And then the details screen, which is the next screen, shows details displays details of that specific record, one record. So if I click on the browse screen here, if I had a value, if I click on the browse screen, it will go to the detail screen to actually show that one record's details. And then on the edit screen, again, you edit one record within your app, right? Okay, that's good. What we need to do first is to actually set up the detail screen to um, mimic what we have on our database table. So you're going to click on detail screen. You can expand this on the left hand side of the screen, or you can just click on the form itself. So there's a detail form within the detail screen that has all the different data cards available for you. So in our case, I want to show the details of the request. So it will be, let's say, for an example, the requester's name, the requester's email, and status, the cost, the device, and also the device brand. How do we do that? So we go on the right-hand side of the screen, which is the properties pane. You click on edit fields. So there's fields, you click on edit fields, and then you click on add field. Right. Based off of how you want this data to show, in terms of the order, you will then need to choose the fields that you want to show quickly. So firstly, what I would do, I can firstly choose to show the requester's full name, then show the requester's email, and then after that, you see I'm leaving request status alone. After that, I want to see the device. I want to see the device, which will be the device name, and I want to see the device brand, and I want to see the device cost. Right, and then I move on to, right, request status. Now I want to show the request status at the end. I can choose to show the image, or I can choose not to show the image. It depends on whatever requirements you have. So in this case, I'm not going to show the image. So I'm just going to show those 246 fields within our detail screen. So I click on add. Once that's done, it will add them on this specific screen. And what I'm going to do next, you can see that it looks untidy or just shows the name of the columns. The reason is because we don't have any data stored within our data source yet. So once that's done, I don't want to show the name and the created on column. So what do? I go back to edit fields. I go to name. I click on the 3 dots there. I click on remove. And then I do the same thing for created on, and I click on remove, right? Then that's it. That's all I need to showcase on this specific screen, right? Now, the next step is to set up where Hadeel will be able to submit her specific request. So how do we do that? We go to the edit screen. We do the same thing that we did for the detail screen. So in this case, we click on the edit screen. We expand it. We click on the edit form one. And then we go to the right-hand side of the screen, which is the properties pane. And then we click on edit fields. And then you add those fields that you want based off of the order that you want to show them. So I started off with the requester's full name, email, and then I went off to look for the device that Hadeel was requesting for. So it would be the device name, the device brand, and the device cost. Now I have the requester's email, full name, device cost, and device brand. Right. But what about the status? I don't want to show the status because I don't want Hadil to add the status for herself. Now that would be very, very, very bad for the business where Hadil is clicking on, okay, if it was rejected by her manager, now she's changing the status back to approved. And then now finance or anyone who's responsible to for ordering those devices is actually ordering a device for a request that was rejected. So we don't want to do that. You don't want to show the request status. Then you click on add. Once that's done, it will do the same thing that we've had within our detail screen. Again, do the same thing for the name column. Remove it because we don't want Hadil to capture that because she won't understand because there's requester full name, so she doesn't want to capture another name again. So you remove that data card. You remove created on because she has nothing to do with the created on, and then voila, you have your edit screen where you can be able to submit that form. But there's a very, very vivid question that I can give you on this. If we preview our application on the edit screen, you can see it says no item to display. What Power Apps is doing in this case is actually looking at, oh, you're on the edit screen, so you are editing a record. And then it says, okay, there's no record that I find that you're trying to edit, so there's no item to display, so you can't edit it. How to navigate that and how to best go about that, I will show you just quickly. Right. But before we do that, there is one trick I want to show you. Let's collapse the edit screen and leave them alone and go to the app segment of our screen, right? So it goes to the app segment of the screen, and then you go at the top, which is also a properties pane in on itself, but it comes with the function bar where you can add your own formulas and all of those things. And you click on that drop down and you look for on start, right? On start, we want to do a specific thing. So we want to personalize the experience of the application, get the signed in user's details. How do we do that? So we go here, right? We do something called setting variables within Power Apps. So to set variables within Power Apps, you use the set function. And then you give your variable a name. So we will call it var user. So we want to just get the details of the user, say var user, and then we set it to user, the user function, which pulls the user information from the signed in user. So this will then allow us to do something very, very cool, right? This will actually allow us to do something very, very cool. So now what we're going to do, because we do not want Hadil to, when we go back to the edit screen, we don't want Hadil to capture her name and capture her email. We need to control that in a different way. First and foremost, we go to the properties pane, we click on advanced, we unlock to change the properties because you need to unlock it. And then what I normally try to do is to use the formula bar at the top, and then you click on that drop down list, you go to display mode, you change it from current display mode and you say display display mode dot disabled, right? And then you go back to that drop down list and you go to default. You want to put the default name of that person, right? So you want to put the default name of that person. So in this case, instead of saying this item dot requester dot full name, we can change it to be a different kind of thing so that Hadil can be able to change the information or can't be able to change the information. But we can actually put this in a function instead of just changing it from this item dot request a full name, we put an if statement. So what do we do? So we say if, right? We say if, so I can remove this, so we can write it again, you'll see why. If edit form one dot, right, dot mode is equal to, right? So normally there's different ways of doing this, is equal to new. Then we want because the edit form one, if it's equal to new, when Hadil opens the form for the first time, we want her to capture information. So that's what it means when it says is equal to new. If it's equal to new, what do we want to do? We want to set the default of this specific field to be Hadil's full name. How do we do that? You remember that variable, which is var user. We say var user dot full name. It will pull Hadil's full name from her profile because she's the signed in user. Else, if the form is not on new and it's on edit, we want to put back that same formula that we found here, which is this item, uh, this item dot requester. I think it was requester full name. So if I find it, dot requester full name, and then you close off your brackets there, and then you will just have it as is, right? So currently there's no changes that's happening there because the form is actually on edit mode. It's not on new mode, right? So that's basically your function. So you do the same thing for the email. You don't want Hadoop to capture an email because you don't want user error. So you go back to email, you click on the data card for email, and then what you do is you click on the drop down. You first change the display mode from, or you first unlock the data card. Then you change the display mode from parent.display mode to display mode.disabled, and then you change the default from being this item dot requester email to this function that we had here, which is if the form is on new, is on the mode new, then we want var user instead of full name this time, var user dot email, because we are able to access it from the variable because we set it on start. And then unless when it changes, if it's not on new and it's on edit, we want to display that specific record's email. So in this case, we'll say requester email, right? Same formula. That's it. That's how you do it, right? Okay, right. But we haven't actually set it to new. How can we actually do that? So in this case, this is where it's going to be on new when Hadil clicks on that button. So we will work through that. But first, let's run on start. So you click on run and start so that it can be able to pull the user information or the signed in user, and then it can be able to use it on our application, right? So let's preview our application using the browse screen. So we click on this and we click on add. You can see that this part at the top, it actually put in my full name without me having to actually put it in or input it in. Even with this email, it put in my developer email without having to actually input it myself, right? So basically, that's basically how you can actually do it, and then you can capture the information, and then you can see the device brand is there, which is Lenovo, HP, Asus, and you can choose it, and then you can add the device cost. There's a field that's missing here on the edit form, which is image that we didn't add because we need to upload an image. But before we can do that, we need a home screen for our application, right? That's basically the business processes that you can add for our application and the functions that you can actually use within Power Apps. That's just a fundamental way of doing it within Power Apps, right? So to add a home screen for our application, what do? We go on the right-hand side of the screen, which is on the tree view. We click on new screen. We choose blank this time because we actually want it to be blank. And then we just move the screen up because we want our application to actually start at this screen because it'll be our home screen, right? We move the screen up, and then what we can do now, if I zoom out a little bit, we change the background properties of the screen. So you go on properties on the right-hand side of the screen, you change the fill, the color of the screen. I can change it to this very light shade of, I think that's blue. If I'm colorblind, forgive me. I change it to that shade. And then after that, I actually want to add in an image. So I'm going to click on add image file. So now that's not how I'm supposed to be doing it, actually. I'm not supposed to to be adding a background image because that's not going to be very useful because it will change the color from being the light shade of blue to the image. But instead, to make it very user friendly, I'll go on insert at the top and then I'll scroll down the different controls that are available within Power Apps. On media, I click on image. Then on image, I just drag it on the middle of the screen, and then I can change this from being sample image on the properties pane, change it from being image to none, and click on add image file. Then I go to my PC, which will then show me the file that I just recently downloaded, and then I click on open. Then you'll see that I've added an image file on the screen or on my actual app, which looks like this currently. And then now we need to make it much more personalized. So how do we do it? Again, what do we need to do is to add another image. So in this case, we want to actually show the profile picture of the signed in user. So we go to media, we click on image, and then we go to the properties pane on the right hand side of the screen. We change the border radius from being 0 to 50, right? Which just changes the border radius of our image a little bit. And then we change the size of our image from being 320 by 320 to being 60 by 60 because we want to make it a little bit smaller, right? And then we just drag it here at the top, and then we add in a label next because we want to greet the user. So we click on insert, we click on text label, and then on text label, we just quickly downsize the text there a little bit so that it can fit on the screen. We change it from being just text and we say welcome, and then we put a space. String concatenation, if you're a professional developer, you can just use the ampersand sign or the and sign. And then now we want to call the user by their full name or their email. In this case, I'm going to call the user by their full name. Again, I'm going to make use of that variable that we created earlier on that on start. So, and I'm going to just say var user dot full name, right? And then says welcome to Meleza Digo, and then I'm just going to add another ampersand sign just for exclamation mark purposes, and I add an exclamation mark so that it'll look like it's shouting at me. And then after that, I want to show the profile picture of the user instead of just a simple image. So how do I change that? I come to image at the top, which is the properties pane, and then on the formula bar, I change it from sample image to var user, which is the same variable that we used earlier on, dot image, right? That's it. It shows my profile picture there. It says welcome, Someleza Digo. I don't know if you can see this, but it shows my profile picture and my name. So if I close the preview again, then afterwards, I'm not going to add a title that says asset management. You'll add it later as homework. So I'm going to add a button now. So I click on add a button. Then I just put it and I drag it a little bit at the bottom here of the screen, and I change it to requests. And then I change the color of the button. Maybe I say, instead of it being blue, I just put it to be a lighter shade of green, which doesn't work. And then it becomes that shade of green. And then because I want to make the button to be a little bit prettier than it is already, I'm going to change the border radius from being 10 to 24. And then you'd find that it'll change the border radius of that button. And then I want us to go back to the formula bar at the top on select, which is an event handler for this button. When the button is selected, on select, we need to change it a little bit. So what we're going to do now is we're going to change it from being false to actually being an actual function. In this case, I just want to navigate to the browse screen because if they meet with this screen, they can't submit their requests. So how do we change that? We're going to change it and say use the navigate function. So that's what I like about the Power Platform and Power Apps is that you use your English words to actually instruct the app to do. navigate function. Where do we need to go? The target. So the target is browse screen one. And then how do we go there? So the screen transition, is it a cover, fade, or cover right? I normally use screen transition dot fade, and then I close it off like this. And then if we quickly run our application now and I click on requests, it will take me to this screen where I can then click on add, and then again and I click on adding a new device, submitting that request, and obviously in that manner, I would then be able to add like a picture that I would need to add for that specific request in terms of invoicing and all of those things. Right. So before we end off, I know I haven't added that in, but before we end off, I want to actually look at one specific thing on this screen, which is a function that we're just gonna quickly waltz through. So in this case, the question is, Hadil and Someleze are using the same application. So that means that currently they can actually see each other's request, whether it was approved or rejected, which means either Hadil can laugh at me or I can laugh at her. So how do we control that? So within Power Apps, again on the items formula, we change it on the formula bar. We change this formula that's already there, we remove it. Then we need to actually set it up a little bit to be a bit more structured so that we can control who sees whose records. I want to see my own records and not see everybody else's records. How do we do that? Within Power Apps, we can filter through the records that are within our table using the filter function. Then it will ask us for the source. The source of the filter function will be our data source. In this case, our data source is asset managers, right? And then it will ask us for the logical test. What are we testing for? So in this case, we're gonna change it and check for if my email is equal to the signed in user's email. So in this case, I'm gonna look for um, request that email within the data source and check through all of the records that are within the data source and look at that request an email column and see if it's equal to the signed in user's email. How do you get signed in user's email? By using the variable var user dot email. So the time that Hadil tries to run this application and submits her request, she'll only see her own request. And then when I submit my own request, I'll only see my own request on this screen. So due to time, I'm not going to capture a specific request, but I would like for you guys to actually carry on and proceed with this solution and see how you can best go about adding on your own flair onto the solution itself, or just carry on and complete it entirely by adding in an image upload here for that invoice because it's a required column that users need to fill in by submitting a specific image. But ideally, we have our app, it's working. Then on the next episode, we would then need to set up our background process. So Hadil, how did you find this session currently?
Absolutely wonderful. Straight to the point, very clear. It's awesome what you can actually do with Power Apps of, building a, asset management application, just using, creating several tables and doing, all these bits here and there. And it's like a drag and drop kind of thing, which I absolutely love about Power Apps. So it's such a great way to learn all about, this kind of asset management series and how you can take it on from there for kind of like the next episode. So thank you so much, Somaliza, for this very informative session. We have a question here in the comments, if I can ask,
Yeah.
is can you style Power App works with CSS using VS Code? Do you have any idea about that?
Well, there's a very specific answer to that, which is yes, you can, and it's dependent on your specific skill set in terms of using VS Code and how you can actually style your Power App or whichever app that you're working on using Power Apps. using CSS, and you can style it properly using VS Code, or you can also style it using the Power App Studio in this case. So how you can do that within the Power App Studio is that you would add an HTML text control, which you then be able to add your gradients and all of those things to your application and change the styling of your application in terms of how your user interface looks like. There is a specific MVP around the Power Platform. She did a very, very good job in making Power Apps or apps built using Power Apps to be very much more beautiful. I normally use her work to actually make my Power Apps very, very, very pretty. So I would like for you guys to actually look at what she has to offer. Her name is Christine. You can find her on Twitter, and she's posted links to her resources around how you can actually go about styling your Power App using Power Apps, the Power App Studio, setting up your gradients using the HTML text control. Ideally, you can also transform that, and you can just take your Power App and edit it within VS Code, and you can edit that HTML text control using VS Code and add your CSS that you actually need.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Malizi, for the answer. To whoever asked that question, thank you so much. We hope that answered your question. And thank you for the people in the comments. I was looking at the comments, and we do have some people, telling us they're joining us from Nigeria, from India. We have from Kenya as well, and so much more. So thank you to everyone for joining us. We hope you all had an informative session. Let us know in the comments if you've enjoyed this session and if you actually learned about it. I know for a fact, coming from a data science background, this session was very informative for me. It's such a great way to kind of, break through, and understand all about, this kind of asset management series and how we can kind of build connected solutions with Power Apps, and, in the next episode with Power Automate. So I love how you kind of explained that thoroughly, and that now that you've built the solution, the application will actually allow the employees to actually submit the request for the hardware refresh cycle based on the allowed conditions, which I absolutely love and which you actually explained to the point. So thank you so much, Sumaileze. Obviously, since we are past the hour, we would love to kind of, explain more, and talk all about everything that there is out there with the Power Apps and with asset management and all that stuff. However, if you would like to actually learn more about Power Apps Canvas, or if you would like to actually learn more and get some more informative, valuable, rich resources which are free for you to learn, our Microsoft Learn platform is actually the best way for you to actually continue your learning journey. So we have here two links, which Sumalese will share his screen for the first link, just so you can actually see. Maybe you can zoom in a bit, Sumalese. So this actually Microsoft Learn module, or learning path, is actually absolutely amazing if you don't have a background in Power Apps, Canvas apps, or if you want to learn more about the basics of Power Apps and how you can use it in your organization to build solutions, to be more efficient in business, this actual learning module is absolutely amazing and a great way for you to continue your learning journey. As you can see, the agenda, it talks all about ways to build Power Apps, how you can design a Power Apps application, additional related technologies, and so much more. So definitely check this resource out. The next resource, learning resource, is how, if you want to learn more about Dataverse Tables, how you can create tables in Dataverse, as as Sumalese briefly explained to us. This kind of gives you an overview on how you can do that with Dataverse and all that stuff, from custom tables to standard tables, and all that information. So to highly check out these two learning resources. Very rich content, very useful for you to build your next solution in any kind of project you want to build, and take it on from there. That being said, thank you, Somalese, so much for being here with me on this session. I hope you had a great time. I absolutely loved having you on this show. And of course, we're not done here yet, Somalese. This is only part one of our build an asset manager process kind of series. So the next episode is going to be on December 16th to continue your learning journey. Somalese, maybe you can tell the audience more what we will be doing next time and why it will be different from this time.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Hadil. So this second session that we're going to have, this will be completing our solution. Like I said earlier on, it's a very simple, basic sessions that you have to attend. so that you can be able to pick up the basics of Power Apps and also Power Automate. So the second session is actually a Power Automate session where now we are trying to build an approval process for our asset management app. So in this case, when Hadil submits her request using the Power App that we just built, that you just saw right now, it will then kick off a Power Automate flow in the background, which we'll build in the next session. And I will show you how to actually build that and set up an approval process and request that will be sent to, let's say, for an example, her manager based off of the conditions. So if, let's say, she has requested for a device that is more than 20,000, then it'll go to her manager so that the manager can approve. And if she has, let's say, for an example, she requested for a specific device that is less than 20,000, 15,000, maybe that would then automatically be approved because it's not above the threshold that is set by the company. So again, that specific session will show you how to build that entire process. And again, don't be very scared about what I'm saying right now. It sounds scary when I'm talking about it, but the moment we start building it, it'll be very, very much simple. It's just a step-by-step process that you can actually do within Power Automate.
Awesome. I look forward to obviously having you again on the show, Somalese, on December 16th, Friday. It's going to be 3 p.m. GST timing. So we look forward to actually having, the audience who joined us today to see how we can use Power Automate to continue on building our solution and to kind of, obviously Somalese has his own way of explaining it and making it easier for us to learn. So I would highly recommend for everyone to join us on that. And that being said, we're actually done for today. Thank you to all the audience for joining us. Thank you for the questions, the comments that we have. We had an absolutely wonderful audience. To stay connected to us or to know where you can find us next or about our upcoming events, Somalese and I, and even other experts and professionals or crowd advocates, Microsoft MVPs in the field, your best bet is to actually join us on our meetup group, which is www.meetup.com/microsoft-reactor-mea/.com. So this is this is our Microsoft Reactor Middle East and Africa group on Meetup. This is where you can join the group just so you can always stay up to date with our latest events and to stay up to date with everything that's happening in the world of technology from other cloud experts, and to know all about that stuff and even to build our own community. That being said, Somalese, thank you so much again for being here with me today, and I look forward to our next session on Friday.
Thank you so much, Hadil. See you on Friday, everyone.
See you. Goodbye. Thank you.